On today's show, I've got Matt Fontana with me. We're going to talk about members of the Cleveland Cavaliers that could be taking home awards for their performance this upcoming season. Plus, one category Evan Mobley needs to be getting votes in. That's all on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can get the show wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. If you're listening via one of those platforms, make sure you click that subscribe button for me. Also, be sure to check us out on YouTube. Just search Locked On Cavs on YouTube. If you're watching this video, hit that thumbs up button, click subscribe, and hit that notification bell as well so you know when the latest Locked On Cavs content is coming your way. Today's show, of course, is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Hi again, everybody. I'm Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like 92.3 The Fan, Cleveland Magazine, and a number of other stops along the way. Joined today by a very close personal friend of mine, a former co-host of mine, and now the host of the Matt Fontana Show on BIGPLAY, and that would be Matt Fontana. He's here to talk about some of the end-of-season awards. You're going to say, oh, well, why are you talking about end-of-season awards? It's late August. The season hasn't even started yet. And you'd be right, but ESPN this week has done a really fun feature. They've been doing this for a really long time with the NFL. They're starting to do it with the NBA. I don't know if they've done it in years past, but they're essentially doing player forecasts for this year. Which players we think could win the MVP, blah, 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 so on and so forth. And the Cavs were mentioned in a couple of different categories. And the one, Matt, that jumped out to me right away was Kenny Atkinson being, I think he finished 5th amongst their future forecast for Coach of the Year this upcoming season. And that was something that jumped out to me because obviously we don't know what Kenny Atkinson is going to look like on the bench for the Cavs. We don't know what the Cavs are going to look like, but I think if he's getting votes for that, the Cavs are going to be in a really good spot.
Yeah, and I think that was super interesting too, Danny, because the top 4 was like Missoula, Oklahoma City, and they all had the same amount. So technically just on an amount, like Atkinson finished second, mostly because the top guys all finished with the same amount. And I think with Atkinson is probably the best thing. You would know that he has a direct impact on the turnaround, right? And that's not to take a shot at JB Bickerstaff or anything. This team is going to be about the same coming back this season as they were last season. So if you see a dramatic improvement or you see a better offensive system, it was 100% Kenny Atkinson. And that's where you can just put your thumbprint on that while these other coaches have already been in their system. And yeah, you want to usually give that award to like the best team or the coach that, again, usually is on the best team. But this one could actually be like the actual coaching job. You know what I mean? Like it's the actual job that Kenny Atkinson did to turn this team around because you know what this team looked like last year, what they are this year. And really, Kenny Atkinson is going to be their only major change. There's a lot on that, and I'm sure you feel the same. It's a lot on that offensive end. If they get to the pace that Atkinson wants to play in, now that you know the core 4 is at least going to start this season together, if he can get the most out of those guys, kind of maybe what you have seen in the past with his coaching, then it was him, and I would assume he'd get some votes for this for sure.
Yeah, I do wonder what this season would have to look like, just in terms of record, where the Cavs finish in the Eastern Conference, for him to be up near the top of that, because JB Bickerstaff obviously didn't get a lot of love for Coach of the Year this past year. The year before, Donovan Mitchell's first year in Cleveland, he did. And the year before that, when the Cavs won 44 games, made the Eastern Conference play-in tournament, ultimately lost to the Nets and then the Hawks in back-to-back games and were eliminated before the playoffs started. But Bickerstaff got Coach of the Year love those 2 years because the Cavs sort of overperformed their expectations. And that's what I think is interesting about this list, because Tom Thibodeau is number 1. The New York Knicks are projected to have a better regular season than the Cavs are. Number 2, Mark Daigneault, OKC. The Thunder should probably be the number 1 seed again in the Western Conference. 3, Joe Mazzulla. Well, the Celtics just won the title. They're going to be really good again. The only coach ahead of Kenny Atkinson that is not projected to be on a team better than the Cavs this year is Greg Popovich in San Antonio. And I think that's pretty directly tied to what Victor Wembanyama looks like. So the thing I am most curious about is, what do the Cavs need to look like record-wise for this to come to fruition?
Do you give it to a guy that gets a 4 seed in the East? I don't think so, right? Like, you would have to imagine he would have to be the 2 seed, and that would probably be just behind Boston. So you're talking about them better than the Knicks would knock Thibodeau out of that, right? Better than the 76ers, which really aren't in this conversation. So I think that is the hard part. Can you really give it to a coach that just got a 4 seed? You're right. Coaches get this vote 2 ways, right? You're either the coach on the best team, or you took a really bad team and got them somehow into the playoffs. That's not the Cavs. They're a middle-of-the-road playoff team at this point, underperformed in the playoffs, and that award doesn't matter for the playoffs, right? It's the coach of the regular season. So It's what he does there. So I would have to say, you're probably right. Like, I would say you got to be a 2 seed in the East. And then I would say you turn your attention to, okay, he really deserves it. And then you're right, on top of what's already happening out the West, where it wouldn't shock me if you've got high 60, I guess high 60s a lot, but somewhere around 60 wins for some of those teams out there. You can't just turn a blind eye to that. I mean, that's some really great basketball. And again, I would say you're right. He's probably got 4 or 5 coaches ahead of him. So it's going to be a tough road for sure.
So I think that there's probably a seed they need to get to, and I think you're correct in bringing up the 2 seed as the one that you kind of look at and say, okay, if they get there, he's probably starting to be in that discussion. I think there need to be a number of wins that you get to, because, you look at last year's 2 seed, the New York Knicks, they didn't exactly win 57 games and run away with that. They were a team that finished, a game or 2 better than the Cavs? They won 50 games, I think, and got the 2 seed. So I think it needs to be a better performance than that. But Matt, even beyond that, I think this is going to tie into the other guy I really want to talk about on today's show. I think what Kenny Atkinson gets out of Evan Mobley and how important Evan Mobley is to the Cavs' success this year, just like based on how good he is. If he takes that giant leap, and we're talking about him for other awards categories, which we're going to do coming up later on in this show, but if Evan Mobley does that, I think that is one thing that there might not be a, X number of wins or X seed in the East or did this, did that. If there's something that's hard to quantify, I think it's Evan Mobley taking a jump. If he does that, I think that is another thing that could vault Kenny Atkinson forward in this conversation.
Same thing with the team. You've seen Evan Mobley under other systems now. And again, he's growing as a player. You always have to account for that. But that's got to be number 1 on Kenny Atkinson's list. Yeah, you got to win games. You got to get Darius Garland back in the flow. Allen, he came here to get Evan Mobley to that next step. Evan Mobley's got the body type, the skill set, that he should be an impactful, some people want him at center, but impactful forward in today's NBA. And it comes back to what, Dan, this too, the mid-range to the 3. If he can become I don't want to say 5-3 a game kind of guy, if he can shoot 2 or 3 threes a game, hit me 1 or 2 of those, have that mid-range game to open things up on this offense, going to help the team. They're going to have a lot of success, but he then starts to be in the conversation of all these other wings. So you look at all, again, we're talking about the awards that we'll get to of it's some guards, Shai's there, certainly Anthony Edwards, but it's a lot of the guys of the same body type or should be playing a similar game to what Evan Mobley has. And if he could just start to do that to hit the outside shot, then we're talking about something that really, you talk about him ascending to maybe becoming the best player on the Cavs, even better than Donovan Mitchell, which I think is a dream for the Cavs. And you would have to give a lot of credit to Kenny Atkinson for that development.
I think if Evan Mobley becomes the best player in the Cavs this year, which is not something I anticipate happening.
Me neither, yeah.
If that happens, Kenny Atkinson will win Coach of the Year. Now, That is provided Donovan Mitchell stays at the level Donovan Mitchell has been at. Now, if Donovan Mitchell gets hurt and Evan Mobley becomes the best player in the Cavs, I think it's a different conversation. But if everything else stays as is, and Evan Mobley takes the jump and he becomes the best player in the Cavs, which I don't foresee, and maybe you do, and that's a different conversation.
Yeah, not
but
this
year. If he becomes that, if he becomes that, the Cavs are going to, I think, achieve all of the things that we've already talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes hand in hand, right? Because you would believe then you have kind of what your dream would be in the NBA, a dynamic guard with a dynamic forward. That's how, and I know wing/forward, but that's the setup that you're always dreaming of. And then, you sprinkle in Jared Allen, which again, to put that on Mobley to say, we might not even need you to be so defensive. And this is a guy that's all defensive, perennial, all defensive team type of guy. But if you can say, Jared Allen's got the post, that's going to be where he's going to live. You can step out a little bit more, even not just on the offensive end, and have your impact there. It just changes everything. And I know the Cavs are top heavy, right? They don't have the depth. They don't necessarily have the guys coming off the bench that you feel great about. But in a playoff series, I'll take a little top heavy. That's fine. I know the Celtics are a prime example of they have really strong depth and they have really good players that are help you to win games in the third and fourth quarter. But if it's going to have to be on Evan Mobley and Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell to go win me a playoff series, then yeah, but Mobley's just got to be a part of that conversation for sure.
The conversation about Evan Mobley is going to continue on because there was one award he was mentioned with, another one he wasn't mentioned for that I think it's a really big deal if he gets his name in that conversation. We're going to talk about that next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships. Also, that very same formula that keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. You talk about the Cavs needing to be at peak performance all the time. Well, it's the same thing for your vehicle. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, style, all three of those things, you can't be in all three of those things. That is allowed. eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. Plus, with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So, Matt, we've talked a bunch about Evan Mobley so far, and his name popped up when we went through and said which player could win the Defensive Player of the Year award, which is something Evan Mobley already has a top 3 finish in. He finished third a couple years back. His second year in the league was also first team all defense. In this voting, he was tied for 9th with the likes of Alex Caruso, Jaren Jackson Jr., who won the Defensive Player of the Year award the same year Evan Mobley finished third, behind several guys. Victor Wembanyama really ran away with the vote here. I do think this is something that I do think Evan Mobley might go down, and he probably won't go down as the best defensive player, the best player ever to not win Defensive Player of the Year, because I think Tim Duncan probably has that locked down. But Evan could go down as one of the better defenders in history that doesn't win this award ever, because now this field is so crowded, and I do think we could get to a point where it becomes, hey, was Victor Wembanyama healthy this year? He was? Okay, he won Defensive Player of the Year. Like, that's what we could be approaching.
Yeah, I agree 100%, especially it's the same thing. The name recognition, once you get into that pool, it's going to be him, and just if he doesn't play well or gets hurt, then it is going to have to go to somebody else. But he just does things that nobody else can. The block shots will be incredible. The fact that he's going to be down in that rim protecting it, it's going to be his award. And also, he just got done with his first year. I imagine he's going to be playing for the next 15 years. He's going to have a lock on it. And it's crazy to think, like, over the next, let's say, 15 years, dude, it's not crazy that he might win 7 of those awards. Like, pretty much every other year, he's going to have that award. Could there be some bias and fatigue? You know, LeBron with the MVP, sure, we might get there, but we're not there now, and we're not going to get anywhere soon. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard for Mobley to get to that point, and especially, you know, I guess one other thing on Wembanyama would be he is the Spurs. Like, they are going to look to him to do everything. So maybe it is he starts paying more attention to the offensive side of the game, where Mobley, again, while Donovan Mitchell is here, can still have that defensive mindset. But what did we just talk about Mobley? It is the offensive growth with him, which is going to be a big part of it. So yeah, it kind of sucks because he's going to be in that conversation, but I do think there's a lot of name bias with that. And to get off of that award, to vote for somebody else, you really need to have a couple things going your way. It's just going to be hard without, you know, with Wembanyama doing what we expect him to do for the next couple of years.
Right, and I think if Evan Mobley is someone who is making an all-defense team, because you know, I don't think there's a ton of argument that he's not that kind of player. Like, we know right. He is an all-defense type of player year in and year out. That's just who Evan Mobley is. That's who Evan Mobley is going to be. As long as he does that, I think that should be enough for Cavs fans, because this field is so crowded, and Evan Mobley not winning a Defensive Player of the Year award doesn't make him any worse of a defender. It would have been great if he would have won it his second year in the league. It'd be great if he wins it one day, but I'm not going to me, that's not going to be something that I think defines Evan Mobley's career when we talk about it, however many years from now. I just don't think that's going to be the thing. I think it's going to be, he was on a lot of winning basketball teams. He was a great defender, blah, blah, all this. But if he doesn't win one because Victor Wembanyama gobbles up so many, then that's just kind of, okay, that is what it is. It's not that big of a deal. The other award that I want to talk about, Matt, that Victor Wembanyama also finished first in, Evan Mobley didn't receive any votes here. I think him receiving votes at the end of the year would be a really great thing. That's most improved player. So Wembanyama was first. Jalen Williams from OKC was second. Kobe White, Cade Cunningham was fourth. Cam Thomas was fifth. Evan Mobley, nowhere to be found. Do you think he should be somebody that we should be thinking about for this award?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially if it is the turnaround that we expect with Kenny Atkinson and you're on a good team. Now, again, Cade Cunningham is not on a good team, but he was a high draft pick, and that's where that name comes from. But a lot of those other names are guys on good teams or again, meant to be a supplement to their team. So there's a little bit more of a spotlight on them. So I think, again, there's two ways to do it. You're either kind of a 2 or 3 guy on a really good team and you elevate your play, or you're the best player on a really bad team and you just somehow ascend and you get a little bit better. So that's more Mobley, where he's on a good team. Can he become that 2 or 3? And I think if you start talking at the end of the year, that's not just Donovan Mitchell, right? That it's teams are really starting to game plan against Evan Mobley, and the Cavs become a real force early into the 2025 calendar year. And you're looking at it and say, it's not just Donovan Mitchell filling it up for 30. It's Evan Mobley who's putting up 25 and 12. It's him that's putting up big points. How could he not get votes on that? Absolutely. And then again, when you factor in that the Cavs should be in the playoff hunt, or at that point, fighting for maybe top seeds, those go hand in hand. It's going to get that spotlight on him for that award. And it's a little different than the NFL. We always talk comeback player of the year. That's almost always guys that got hurt last year.
The Joe Flacco award.
Always, right? It's always guys that got hurt and they come back and you're like, wow, that guy came over his injury. It's great. The NBA is so different. It is almost always guys that actually truly did improve. It wasn't guys that they were good, then got hurt. Here's your pity award. No, it's guys that actually got a lot better over the last couple of years of their. Who was it that won it twice? Well, there's somebody that won the not 6 man, your most improved. There was somebody that won it twice. It might have been in the NFL. And I'm like, how do you do that? How does that happen? Once you win that, aren't you to a level?
I do think,
on that.
No, because I think there are multiple jumps that you could take.
I guess,
I think that you could win it twice. I would have no issue with someone winning it twice, because you take a look at, for instance, take a look at someone like Giannis, where Giannis, from what he was to becoming a good NBA player, he could have qualified as someone that wins that award, and then he goes from a good NBA player to an NBA MVP level player. Well, isn't going from that the biggest improvement you can make? So I don't necessarily disagree with a guy being able to win it twice. I'm trying to look to see.
I know there's someone who's going to annoy me. Yeah, there was somebody
that I see right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking on the NFL one, but because it's the MVP defensive rookie I kept going, not most improved, but comeback player. That's what it was.
Maybe Chad Pennington.
Chad Pennington won it twice in 06 and 08. He won it twice. How does that happen? I don't understand that.
Because 05 and 07 were bad for Chad Pennington, man.
I guess really. I didn't know we'd get to Chad Pennington on this podcast today, but yes, Chad Pennington won the comeback player of the year twice, which I just don't understand.
Yes. I mean, hey, it happens. To come back, you got to have a setback, and he certainly did. So the other thing I wanted to talk about with Evan Mobley is ESPN also asked, which players are most likely to make their first All-Star team. Evan Mobley, to this point, has obviously not made an All-Star team. Again, this is a very common theme here, but Victor Wembanyama was the most common answer here. Evan Mobley was 6th. Matt, do you think that is in an appropriate place for Evan?
Yeah, I mean, the tough thing is in the East, it's just going to be, he's always going to have to go up against Embiid. He's always going to have to go up against Giannis. He's always going to have to go up against, different positions, but still forwards like Bam Adebayo. Like, there's just going to be a list of guys in front of him that are going to be really hard to overcome. But I think that's fair. And I also think the All-Star comes back to how good is your team, right? If the Cavs are one of the best teams in basketball, you're going to argue that they should get 2 or 3 All-Stars. Donovan Mitchell should make an All-Star team every year that he's here, and they expect that to be. But if the Cavs are in the 2 seed or in the 3 seed come All-Star voting, how they do in the play-in tournament maybe, then you're going to start really making that argument that they should have 2 or maybe even 3 All-Stars, and that's where Evan Mobley would be able to slide in. So, I mean, it's a 2-front war for him. It's the other forwards that he's got to go up against in the East, which isn't nearly as tough as out West, clearly, but still, he's got some guys he has to go through in the East, and then you're just going to need the Cavs to be playing well, where it's a no shadow of doubt they deserve multiple All-Stars.
Right, and I do actually think it'll be easier for Evan Mobley to make the All-Star team than it will be for Darius Garland to make the All-Star team. And that is something because it's the guys that Evan's competing with for the All-Star team, obviously very difficult, as you mentioned. It's Joel Embiid, it's Jason Tatum, it's Giannis. Like, it is just a loaded group of guys. But Darius Garland is also competing with someone on his own team to make it for a guard spot, because Donovan Mitchell, I think it's fair to say you and I probably agree pretty strongly here that if he plays like Donovan Mitchell, he's a lock to be on the All-Star team. That makes it more difficult for Darius than Evan, in my opinion, because Darius can't necessarily be the best guard on his own team. Evan Mobley can be the best front court player on his own team. I have no doubt about that. There are other awards. The Cavs were not mentioned. We're going to discuss if we think they should have been mentioned for anything. Were the Cavs snubbed from these fake award ballots for things that haven't actually happened yet? We discuss next on Locked On Cavs. Today's show also brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook, and you've heard us talk about FanDuel so much here on Locked On Cavs. Well, today, as I talk about FanDuel, I've got something that's just a little bit different for you, because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5, it's $5, only $5, and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's awesome. I've got NFL Sunday Ticket. I don't know how people live without NFL Sunday Ticket when the fall rolls around and football season is back. So if you bet $5 on FanDuel, you can get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Maybe you want to bet on the Cleveland Guardians to win tonight, or this afternoon, I should say, against the New York Yankees as they wrap up that sweep. That extra inning win the other night was thrilling. Maybe they can get another win in New York. We'll find out. If you bet $5 on FanDuel, though, you can get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket. Then with the YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. So, Matt, there were other things that were listed, and as we get to these, I do have to thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. And now for your second listen of the day, go check out the Locked On NBA podcast, because there's no offseason here. We're talking about after-season awards, but there's no offseason in the NBA. Everyone knows that. It's available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Matt, let's go down the list. We'll start at MVP. No one from the Cavs was mentioned. It's the usual suspects up top, where you've got Luka Doncic, who's not yet won an MVP, but seems to be the betting favorite at the start of every year. Nikola Jokic, who's won 3 of them, could be number 4. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's not yet won one. No Donovan Mitchell listed here, though. Was he snubbed from this fake awards ballot?
I don't think so. I mean, it's going to be hard because, again, name recognition, I think a positional battle here where can you really look at, and again, Shai's on there, and I guess you can look at Jalen Brunson too, but like, I think it's going to go to like that wing, that forward. And it's just when Jokic is playing, no matter how good the Nuggets are, he's just so dominant. You feel like Giannis should be there. So I'm going to say, as much of being a Cavs fan as I am, I don't take that as a big snub for Donovan Mitchell.
Seeing Ja Morant on that list, and it was very low on the list, I believe he got 2 votes, but seeing Ja Morant on that list was a little bit of it was a little surprising, just because we don't know what he's going to look like when he's back on the floor. He's played, 8 games basically in the last 2.5 years or year and a half. So I am very curious what that looks like. Kevin Durant getting a vote, I just kind of think that time has passed. Anthony Davis too. He finished 8th. I just don't see a world in which he elevates himself to that level of play. Could he be defensive player of the year? Is he going to be an all-star, all-NBA? Sure, but this is just a different level. Rookie of the year, the Cavs have one guy here who's a possibility. Jalen Tyson was their number 20 overall selection, the Cavs' first pick in the draft. He's not mentioned either. Reed Shepherd, Zach Edey, Donovan Clingan, those guys are the top three. I do think that Jalen Tyson probably has a better opportunity at this than people realize. He could get votes, but I don't think he's going to have enough usage. He's not going to be able to carry enough load being on a good team to win this type of award.
No, I agree with you. And it's also, I feel like Rookie of the Year has been a little, I don't want to say upsets, but you've had some where you're like, oh, you didn't see this guy coming out of nowhere. So that kind of leans towards him. I like the Reed Shepherd pick there a lot. I don't like Edey for some reason. And it's not just about him coming out. Like, I just think there's, again, a lot of hype there. So I don't know if I'd go with Edey, but I like the Clingan. If I had to put money down, I'd put that. Maybe Stephon Castle a little bit, but I would probably go Reed Shepherd on that one.
Yeah, with Edey, like, I think he's a good player. I just don't know how well he's going to fit in Memphis. Like,
is he going to do anything dominant? Yeah, is he like going to do anything?
He won't be dominant, but he'll still be.
Yeah,
I still think he'll be good, but I think Memphis is going to want to run, and Zach Edey's not a guy that I think can get up and down the floor at the pace they're going to want to go with Ja Morant.
Right.
Like, that's my issue there.
Yeah, for sure.
And then lastly, 6th Man of the Year award. No Cavs were mentioned. Malik Monk, Alex Caruso, Naz Reid, who won it this past year, is number 3. Other guys listed. Russell Westbrook tied for 7th. Josh Hart, friend from the New York Knicks, tied for 9th. I think Karis LeVert would be the guy here. And I have to say, I'm not necessarily in disagreement with him not being listed here, Matt.
No, but it also wouldn't shock me if there was buzz for it by the end of the year. You know me, man. I'm a big Karis LeVert fan. I love him on this team. I think he fits a great role. And it's kind of like a positive. I guess they don't need him to fill it up. Now, he can some nights, and he can also have really, really poor shooting nights. But I agree. I don't think he should be on this list right now, but it wouldn't shock me come the end of the season if his usage is what you need it to be or what you think it might be, especially under Atkinson, who he's got familiarity with. Wouldn't shock me if he's in the conversation at the end of it, but yeah, I wouldn't peg him right now as one of the favorites now.
I also wonder if he'll be on the Cavs when the time to vote for this. Like, I do wonder because he's someone that's on an expiring contract. He could be traded for something that maybe is a little bit of a better fit. So I wonder, maybe he is getting 6th Man of the Year award votes, but maybe he's wearing a different jersey. I think that's a possibility too that we have to think about here, Matt.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that's, the intrigue of this season where I really am looking at it 2 different complete seasons, right? Pre-trade deadline and post. And are you going to get the couple of months to prove that the 4 of these guys work together, talking about the big 4? And then you're right, to make those moves, you're going to have to part with other pieces. You're going to have already seen the Jordan Clarkson, sign and trade for Isaac Okoro. Like, this stuff's all kind of swirling around, but I think they're going to stay set. And then the first part of that, if it doesn't go well, it's going to be Garland. It's going to be Okoro. If he, again, signs the tender, he'll be here. And then obviously Karis LeVert, those are going to be your movable pieces. And I would imagine that at least 2, if not all 3 of them, could be moved if it's not showing what they want it to show.
You can find Matt's stuff on Big Play, the Matt Fontana Show, every day on YouTube, Twitter. Where else is it streaming, Matt? Anywhere else I'm missing?
Twitch, if you're into Twitch. We're on Twitch, but
yes.
Big thing is definitely YouTube and Twitter. And a shameless plug, we do have a brand new app that just launched. So if you're on Apple or you have Roku TV or an Apple TV, you can search Big Play. We have a brand new free app that you can download and get all of our content there as well.
Yeah, check that out. Every weekday, 9 to 11, Matt never has me on because Matt hates me. So you can hold that against him. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Fontana 83.
Hey, Maverick didn't advance in the bracket this week, by the way. I put it in for you.
I do watch your show
I know
every day, and I do.
You yell at me about the Immaculate Grid.
I do. You guys do the Immaculate Grid every day, and you're terrible at it. So I yell at you about that, and I try and influence your bracket choices. That's what
we put Danny's bracket in for. It was the best school-related movie, and you were right. You were right. They were in Flight School. I put it in, and it was up to the people. So you got to yell at the people. That's not my fault.
I voted 3 times for it.
I'm sure you did. I know the burner accounts. I see them.
Sure did. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every day. You can check out the show, YouTube, wherever you get your podcast as well. Make sure you give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button everywhere as well. Help us to grow the show, and we will be back with more Locked On Cavs content. Have a great day, everybody.